So the general consensus is that January sucks, right? That's what I've always thought, and because of that I thought, why not, as January starts to come to an end, as the internet is telling me that it's Blue Monday where more people are feeling crap than any other day of the year, just recommend you some books that might put a smile on your face, whether that be because they're laugh out loud funny, inspirational, empowering, or just heartwarming. I just wanted to recommend you some books that might distract you from the misery that is the beginning of a new year. Without further ado, let's get into the books. I'm going to start with one of my go-to recommendations for any low mood, and that is a comical book, and particularly one of the Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett. So I have a whole video on where you can start with Terry Pratchett, as he wrote so many books set on this planet of his own creation, although they are more fantasy books than science fiction, although they're set on another planet. It's in this whole universe that he's created. However, I'm going to specifically recommend in this video Weird Sisters. And as with my Terry Pratchett recommendations, I always recommend you a book you could start with without having read any of his other books. So Weird Sisters for me is very much a book that you can read without having read anything else, and is a great introduction to the Discworld. Weird Sisters is a fantasy novel set in the Discworld following 3 witches who are part of a coven in Lancre, which is one of the areas of the Discworld, and these witches are brilliant. We have Margaret, Nanny Og and Granny Weatherwax, all of whom are the most incredible women. These are 3 inspirational characters if I ever did read any. Not only are they strong, fabulous witches, but they're also hilarious, and one of the fun, unique aspects of this book in particular is that it parodies a lot of different Shakespeare themes and Shakespeare plays within the one, and naturally there's already a kind of that Macbeth element there with 3 witches from the beginning, but you will see as the story goes on and it interacts with different characters, mistaken identities, court politics, travelling, theatre groups. There are so many fun Shakespeare references for people who are Shakespeare fans that there's plenty to sink your teeth into, but even if you're not, you don't need to be to enjoy the fun and laughter that is the Weird Sisters. Next on my list, however, is You Sad Feminist. That doesn't really sound like the most upbeat book, I know, but it's a collection of poetry by Megan Beach that I positively adored. It is Megan Beach's second complete collection, and I think if anything will make you feel a little bit better than this poetry collection will, or at least it did for me. This is a poetry collection that explores 2 major themes, which are feminism and feminist activism, and depression. So it very much draws on the poet's own experience of bad mental health and struggles with depression, as well as her desire to be a feminist activist and put her beliefs into practice and make the world a better place for herself and everybody else in it. And regardless of who you are, you certainly don't have to be a woman to get something from this collection. I think you will find it so comforting and inspirational at the same time. It doesn't make you feel under any pressure to do anything, it just makes you feel supported, which is quite an incredible thing I think for a collection of poetry to do. I think it's so relatable from various different angles, dealing with various different topics, but an intersect between them all. And I always say when I recommend this poetry collection, it's like sitting down with a good friend who just says, I understand what you're going through, I am here for you, and together we can do amazing things. And I think that is like the most wonderful, incredible thing you could get from a poetry collection, so do check this one out. We then have The Stone Gods by Jeanette Winterson, which is a book about love, which actually I think a lot of Jeanette Winterson's books are. I think love is a heavy theme in her writing. But The Stone Gods was actually my first Jeanette Winterson, and it's a science fiction, literary fiction novel with 3 main parts. So we kind of follow 3 independent stories but with interconnecting themes, and they're exploring different potential futures for the earth and what might happen to the earth depending on the way we as humans treat the earth and take advantage of the earth and mistreat the earth, and amidst these different, very different futures or time periods, we follow these love stories, these stories of two people connecting amidst worlds that look quite different from our own, or perhaps remind us of potential futures of our own. And we follow these characters connecting with one another and falling in love, and it is so beautiful. It's also got a mixture of different sexualities represented, lots of queer romances, and it is just gorgeous. And like with all of Jeanette Winterson's writing, in my experience, beautifully written, like just prose that you can sink your teeth into and savour and absorb and spend hours gazing at the same page and find so many things to think about. We then have The Art of Asking, which is a non-fiction memoir slash self-help book. I don't know if self-help book is the right description, and I instantly do not feel drawn to books that are described as self-help, so it's maybe not the most convincing genre description. But it is helpful and it is inspiring, and that is The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. So Amanda Palmer is a musician and a creator and an artist, and this is her story about her journey with creativity, finding her passions as a creator, her forms of art, but also asking for help and embracing help from other people, and not feeling like she needs to cut herself off or go it alone, or like she's not worth the same if she gets help from other people, and you know, just kind of working with her fans. And there's just a lot going on there because it is her specific experience, but it also very much feels like a book that is providing you with advice, which, like I said, I'm not usually drawn to, but this is a book that very much bends that genre. So even if you are deterred from that kind of book normally, I would recommend this. I picked up on the recommendations of friends and I was so glad I did. It came to me exactly the right time, and I just found it really comforting, empowering and inspiring. It treaded on my doubts and it fed my creativity in a really wonderful way, and that is regardless of what your passions are, whether you think of yourself as a creative person or not. I think actually what we all do is not that dissimilar from everybody else, whether you are a doctor or a painter or enjoy doing maths or doing English. It doesn't matter. I think there's something in this book for you, and it was just really interesting following her story. We then have The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman, because I thought what better than a nice middle grade children's book to recommend to you. And this book is actually a retelling of The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling, but with Neil Gaiman's very particular spin on it. So this, instead of following Mowgli, a young boy abandoned in the jungle and raised by animals, follows a baby abandoned in a graveyard and raised by ghosts and other ghoulish creatures, until a threat to his everyday life comes up and changes everything. And it's such a unique concept. I mean, it's obviously not unique in its bare bones plot because it is a retelling of The Jungle Book, but it's such a unique retelling and reconceptualization of that story. And Neil Gaiman is such a creative writer. He really draws you in, whether he is writing for adults or children. His work is so vivid, it's so imaginative, and so absorbing, and I think that this is true of The Graveyard Book, which is incredibly entertaining. Is about a little boy child raised in unconventional circumstances and learning about the world around him, and it is so heartwarming, entertaining and wonderful. We then have Solace by Gail Carriger. This is a book that all at the same time is funny, historical fiction with paranormal and fantasy elements, and it is brilliant. It is set in 1800s London, and it's the first in a series called the Parasol Protectorate series by Gail Carriger, and it follows our protagonist Alexa Tarabotti, who is a preternatural. So this is 1800s London like you have never seen it before, in that werewolves, vampires and even ghosts and other paranormal beings are in existence, and everyone is perfectly aware of them. In London they have been integrated into society, and everyone is like aware of and in constant really contact with werewolves and vampires. Alexa, however, has her own strange ability which is less common and less well known, and that is that basically if she touches a paranormal being, they become human again. only for the time in which she's touching them. But that still makes her quite a daunting young woman, and a daunting young woman she is in many other ways. By some she's seen as a spinster because she's yet to get married, although by today's standards she's not that old. She has a very, very strong personality, a strong sense of self, an independent nature that is allowed by both her station and her unique abilities, and it gets her into a lot of trouble. And it is brilliant. She has some fantastic relationships with the other characters. There is quite a cheeky romance in the background, as well as a mystery subplot, and it's just brilliant. This is a series that is well worth the hype. And lastly, I thought I would finish off with one of my favourites, and that is Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Davis. This is a collection of essays and speeches by Angela Davis, who is a political activist, academic, someone who's been around for a long time and involved in the civil rights movement, as well as other forms of activism, and someone I find incredibly inspiring. So a bit of background, Angela Davis was imprisoned, and there was this massive campaign around her during the civil rights movement to free her from prison. Free Angela Davis was a big slogan at the time, I believe. And since then she has used that attention she has garnered to do more, continue with her political activism in the civil rights movement, but also in regards to just general left-wing politics and socialism. I think she was a member of the Communist Party at one point, Black Panther Party at one point, and she's an incredibly clever woman. And what this collection very much draws together is the way in which international activism and solidarity movements can work together, and what inspiration we can draw from movements in one country and how they can inspire movements in another country. And it's a really positive look at political activism and change that can be made, and it's a very almost practical book. I think you read it and you feel very much like you can do something to make the world a better place, and it gives you suggestions really on how you can unite with other people to do that by exploring various different circumstances from around the world, from her home of America and the civil rights movement to prison campaigns, politics in Asia and Africa and Europe, and it is brilliant. It is a tiny book, it's less than 200 pages, yet it packs a massive punch, and if you should go into the new year with anything, in my opinion, it's a little bit more inspiration to do a little bit more good and to channel a little bit more solidarity, so why not pick this one up? But those are my recommendations for the otherwise sucky month of January, which is almost at a close, but you might need something good to kick off your February and help you get over what is perhaps the slump that comes mid to late January after all the highs of the seasonal festive period. So I do hope you have found something interesting in this video. I'd love to know what books you would recommend in the spirit of this video, and if you have any thoughts on any of the books I've mentioned. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!